Welcome to Conversations with John and Lisa, and we are joined again by our beautiful daughter-in-laws, and that is Julianna, who is married to our oldest son, Addison, and we have Christian to my right, who is married to our youngest son, Arden, who Christian always points out is the tallest. And anyway, and Addison's the oldest and the wisest and the smartest, right? So this is fun. Can I say I'm such a blessed man to have these girls. I always wanted daughters, and I really felt like I got a better deal. So I am so honored to be your father, that you call me Papa, and it really, really is a blessing to me. You call me Daddy John. You do, right? That was your nickname for me, right? No, you've always called me Daddy John. Right, anyway, but it's just a joy because I didn't have to change their diapers, and I got to be their dad.
Wow.
So anyway, let's move on.
Will you change my diaper if that becomes the necessary thing
so
in the
as
future?
you can see, and those of you that are listening, you can't see, we are now doing our podcasts on video. Yeah. So you can go to John Bevere channel on YouTube. You can go to Lisa Bevere channel on YouTube, and you can watch us. And you can see these silly headphones that we have on and all that kind of stuff. But you can see these gorgeous daughter-in-laws that I'm talking about and my absolutely gorgeous wife. But anyway, I just want to say that Messenger now has a family of podcasts, and we call it the Messenger Podcast Network. So on there, you have Messenger Podcast. You've got, and I got to make sure I say it right, Let's Talk About It with Sons and Daughters.
There they are.
Shout out, girls.
Just daughters.
Yoo-hoo. And then there's some new ones coming along. We've already started even recording on. You'll see that in future. We just want to minister to you. We want to strengthen you in your walk with Jesus. We want you to have healthy relationships. We want to see you succeed in life. This is what God is for you. Can you understand? Please always know God is for you. He's not against you. He's not trying to get a strike on you. He's not trying to knock you down. He loves you. You are his child. You are valuable. We understand that, Messenger International. We want you to flourish into what he's created you to do. So this is why we come to you in all different forms, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, whether it's courses. It's all access. We just want to strengthen your walk with God because the world will recognize that God is in our midst when we just align ourselves with him. So we are picking up.
Yeah, mic drop.
Anyway, we're continuing the series. We weren't supposed to do this. Maybe this is why this is so much fun already. But on love and relationships, this is part 3. We were supposed to only do 2 parts. You two had such great input. Lisa, you were amazing. So we just want to continue the conversation. So babe, let's jump in.
Yeah, I'm gonna get Christian and Julie to weigh in on this. Okay, here's the question. How would you feel if your spouse had a good friend of the opposite sex?
Oh, that's a good question.
Would that make you uncomfortable? Who wants to go first?
So I don't have to imagine because this was actually Arden and I's first conflict. I won't say fight, conflict. So as y'all know, Arden is very relational, and he is very much, I believe, a loyalist. So the people that are close to him in his life are like his people. He will fight for them and they for him as well. And when we first got married, and I'm laughing because it is laughable now, but when we first got married, he had this great close friend that was a female. And from my background and things that I had seen around relationships, I wasn't exactly okay with how close they were as we were entering engagement and marriage. You know, dating, it was one thing, but I kind of got that little bit of, okay, this is my husband. This is my time to text him. And, you know, part of that was me entering a new season, wanting to feel 100% secure, wanting to feel like I'm moving here, we're moving in together, you are all mine. So part of that I could have had more growth and more grace for. I will admit that. But
you have grown.
I have. Thank you, John, for that. But it was, you know, when you get married, relationships change, dynamics change, how you interact with the opposite sex does change. It doesn't mean it has to be a night and day difference, but I do believe that there is a level of interaction that just, it shifts for whatever reason. But this friend was one of Arden's best friends. It wasn't just someone that he would text. You know, they were really close, and it was a healthy, strong relationship. And when we got married, I just voiced, hey, you know, the amount of times y'all communicate, the amount of times y'all are texting, I don't feel comfortable with it. And it was something that Arden, going from being mostly single his whole life, he had to kind of learn. And I had to be vulnerable and to express it, not in a way of accusing him of anything that wasn't there, not in a way of saying, this is what you're going to do because I'm your wife and I say so. But it was me saying, hey, this is how I feel about the situation. I want to be real and I want to have boundaries in our relationship. Like, what do you think? And it was a back and forth. It was a communicating things and then instances still coming up. And, I can say part of this today because she and I now are the best of friends. I was actually just talking to her on the way over here, but it was something in her mind, she did have to learn. It's interesting when you have guy friends that get married and you want to remain friends, but I don't think that friendship has to go away. It just has to be honoring for the new person coming in. So we had probably an hour phone call of me saying, hey, this is where I land on the situation. This is how I feel. Her voicing her intentions, which I knew, but it was great to hear again. She was not coming to steal my man. She was trying to keep her friend in her life. And, what that turned into is their one-on-one communication dwindled down, and her and I's communication and friendship had time to build and to grow. And so now it's not even weird if I see her name on his phone. If something's going on in her life, I know about it. And we have a friendship between us rather than something that feels like it's just between them two. And should I be concerned? There's just it doesn't have room for unhealthy things to come into it now.
Yeah. I love that. And, I think sometimes in that early season, you do need to kind of step away from some stuff so that you can develop. That's a marriage. That's not like, hey, we're all friends. But I know that all of you guys are friends now, and that's incredibly valuable that you were able to work through that instead of alienate and cut people off. How about you, Julie?
I want to say something.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
If Arden would come to me on something like that, my counsel to him was, and it still would be, Arden, what Christian's comfortable with is a firm answer for you. And if she's not comfortable, you need to drop this friendship. And the reason is, Lisa and I both believe that in a spouse situation like this, if there is a no, it becomes a hard no. It becomes,
if
okay,
either
one of us says no on something, it's a no. It's not a maybe. It's not a fight it over until that's part of a covenant relationship. Lisa's not comfortable with something, then I can't do it.
Well, or it's a no
I don't want to
until we
do
grow.
it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Until we grow
Yeah,
and we give it space. So because
y'all had a situation, didn't you, where like a prophetic dancer or singer felt like she was called to travel when you were traveling in your ministry?
Yeah, and Lisa wasn't comfortable, and we it was
had a big
done.
fight about it.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
did,
we had a
but
big
it
fight.
was that was like 20 years ago, and unfortunately, something set me up for that, and I look back now, and
John had somebody give him a prophetic word that somebody was going to be traveling and doing stuff with him other than his wife, which is completely weird. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening. So it was a growing experience, and I think that's where we learned.
That's where we learned this
that the
rule
hard
that we
no
live
is-
by, and it's actually a healthy rule. I'm not saying it's a rule; it's a guideline we live by.
Yeah.
If it's a no for Lisa, it's a no for me. If she's no, I'm yes. It's a no, and I think that keeps marriages strong and healthy. And I love that. I feel safe by that rule.
Yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't even really feel like a rule at this point because I'm sure some
It
people are
doesn't.
listening thinking,
It's safety.
that's so legalistic, that's weird.
Yeah,
you're
so that's
not
why I hate using the
fun."
word rule. And you're right, Christian. I'm glad you really clarified that for me.
Yeah, and I trust John. So we're going to have conversations around it. But I also have learned that if he sees something that I'm missing, I need to listen to him. If I see something that he's missing, he needs to listen to me. We've just had a better situation with that. All right, Julie, how about you?
So Addison and I do have a pretty, it's a guide. It's not really a rule that we are not closer with the opposite sex than our spouses. So I have some really close guy friends. I mean, all of my brother-in-laws are some of my closest guy friends, but they're closer with their brother Addison than they are with me. And the same goes for a lot of my close girlfriends who I'm closer with, but Addison is with some of them even as close, but it is always through me in a sense. And it's not legalistic. It doesn't feel like I have to be this boundary, but that for us has been how we stay so far away from towing that line. Because there's a lot of space where you could say, well, it's not that big of a deal. or it's not like we're flirting, or it's not like we're doing this or this, but you just don't even want to get anywhere near that. And we did have a specific instance where there was a young single girl, and she viewed Addison like a brother. Hate that phrase. Like, can everyone just stop using it? If you don't have the same mom and dad, they're not your brother. They're not your sister.
Whoa.
Like,
In Christ.
but people use that as an excuse to be like, but they're like my brother, so we can go camping and sleep in the same tent. It's like, no. Your mom said no.
That's a hard no, Julie.
Mom says hard no.
That's an actual. Anyway, it wasn't that situation. But she viewed him like a brother until it wasn't. Until there was some line in her brain that was crossed where she really started to depend on him to fulfill something. And she had some father wounds, and it was good until it wasn't. And I'm thankful for that situation, because in an instant we realized how quickly it can change.
Boy, that's a good point.
So you have to stay away from that line. Like
Yep.
you said, you have to be having conversation with your spouse, even if you're like, I know this is going to seem dumb, but I had a 2-hour conversation alone with this person. I FaceTime with a pastor a few weeks ago, and it was just FaceTiming with another married man. I was like, this feels a little odd. That was probably unnecessary, but just that it peaked in my brain. I told Addison. He was like, yeah, you don't need to worry about it. Like, it wasn't a big deal. But anytime something feels off, feels a little strange, at the risk of seeming foolish, talk to your spouse about it.
I
On
love
either
that,
side.
Julie. Communicate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if there's something you find yourself not wanting to tell your spouse, chances are very good your spouse should probably be hearing it.
Yeah.
So, and that's something you've got to settle. I mean, you made the covenant with God to take care of your spouse, to be your spouse's one and only for forever, for your life, until death do you part. And I just believe it's so important that you honor your spouse's wishes.
Yeah. And if you have open communication with someone of the opposite sex, and it's just friendly or totally innocent, what if you then get in a fight and it just switches, where it's like, this is someone who I can confide in, who I can get a perspective from, but then they're filling a place that only belongs to your husband. And I mean, it's with social media, with DMs, it happens so quickly. You have to really be aware of how quickly it shifts.
See, and this is the great thing about being 60, because nobody thinks I'm after them. I can DM anybody, and they're like, "Oh, it's a grandpa texting."
Oh my
me."
gosh.
So
It does get easier as you
it
get
does,
older.
yeah.
It really
it's-
does.
It is a little different.
Yeah.
Because they do see you as a mother, in the faith, like an older woman and an older man. So what were you going to say, Miss Christian?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, being that y'all have been married for so long in ministry and somewhere where it should mostly be innocent, but there are situations that come up. How have y'all really protected your marriage over the years?
I will say this. People have asked me, do you get nervous with you two being apart? Because we travel separately. And I always say, I never even am concerned about Lisa, because
Because she does women's meetings.
No, that's not just it. Because her deep fear of the Lord. So fear of the Lord doesn't mean to be scared of God. It means you're terrified to be away from him. It means you will obey him even if it hurts you, even if it's not beneficial to you, if you don't see the benefit, right? The person that fears God says, I don't care. I don't care if I see the benefit, I'm going to obey God. Lisa has a deep fear of the Lord. If you look at Proverbs 31, that was always the thing that I thought exemplified my wife, is that, charm is passing, charm is deceitful, beauty is passing, but the woman who fears the Lord, she'll be praised. And that's my wife. And I think she sees that with me. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're sitting right here. But I know for me, it's her deep-seated fear of the Lord that has always brought my heart comfort.
John is, I've never had to worry about him on the road. And it's not because, we put in outside barriers. I do think that sometimes those are legalistic. And like Jesus talked to women. So I don't want my husband to be like, hey, I can't be talking to women. Women are vixens trying to seduce me. I want him to be able to talk to women in wisdom. You're not going to go off into a private room unless you have another woman with you, maybe 2 women or 2 guys. So, I know he uses discretion, but my husband is very inwardly wound towards the fear of the Lord. So I don't have to worry about putting so much outward constraints on him. We have had some friends that have made mistakes, that have started right, counseling somebody, maybe, a young wife, and she's sad and her husband's doing this or that. And then, the pastor closes the door for privacy, and then there's an emotional bond and things become a problem. So I think sometimes that's because they started right, and then maybe at one point he should have brought in an older woman, which is what the Bible says, older women come alongside and help, or have both the couples. Because, hey, I can talk to people about my side of the story. John can talk about his side of the story. But if we're really going to get the truth, we need both people in front of somebody to actually navigate the situation. So, but yeah, doing
I don't
women's
harp
meeting
on this, but I want to ask this question from a different perspective. So we've talked about friendship. What about people who have to work closely with people of the opposite sex? Like, this is their job. They can't really choose to have their husband be closer with this person because he doesn't work with them. Like, how could they, or how should they go about this?
I think communication's important. I think it's not just a one-time, okay, let's say it's a policeman, a policewoman. She's my partner. We have to ride around, and that's it. Closed discussion. I think there should be a conversation whenever the policeman's wife needs to talk about it, or whenever he feels that he should talk about it, just so things don't start happening that are crossing lines and unaware. Because once you cross a line and your spouse is unaware, you now don't have the protection factor of your spouse seeing things from a healthier perspective. You're in the midst of the woods with this person. So I would say that's important.
Yeah, I actually had a work relationship when we were first married, and I was actually pregnant with your husband. I was pregnant with your husband. And because I was pregnant, I saw myself as completely, like, I don't know, off the grid. I'm just a big pregnant person. And there was a guy who was my boss, and he kept inviting me out to lunch, and I'd go out to lunch with him, again, pregnant, feeding a baby. And I do remember it came to the place where one day I realized that it was unhealthy. And I came to John, and I went to my boss, and I said, I don't know what needs to happen. I don't know if I need to be demoted or whatever, but I cannot work with him anymore because he's putting demands on me that only my husband should put on me. And never got physical, but I left that position, and he sexually assaulted somebody after I left. So it was really crazy. So listening to that inner witness, I think we all need to listen to that intuition.
Okay.
In those
I'm going to
kind of
ask you a question
circumstances.
because we're on protection on this this podcast. How do you handle controlling in-laws, Lisa? How should somebody? Because I hear about this over and over and
that
over
was a
again.
segue, Christian.
And because it's again about protection, and I hope I'm not going to hear, oh my gosh, John and Lisa, you are too much into our marriage.
Can I actually ask a question in
Yeah.
between those two?
Yeah.
It sounds like from certain words we've said of, communication, emotional relationships, physical, it sounds like there can even be a communication aspect, not even when things arise or subjects happen, but just continually within your relationship of, hey, this is areas we need to grow in. This is how I connect with you emotionally. So even before anything becomes a problem, would you say that communication is the very first step in preventing all of that?
I would. And I would actually say that this guy that I worked with, he met some emotional needs in my life at that time that John was not meeting. And so what happened was, instead of allowing him to meet those, I should have gone to my husband and said, wow, I'm realizing that I have a big need in this area. And how can we move into that direction? And I know why John's bringing up controlling in-laws, because there was a point that my mom actually said, this is the kind of man I raised you to marry, not the one you married. And that was a wake-up call for me. When my mom said that to me in the car, I realized, wait, something is off kilter here. And I got alone with God, and I said, okay, what's going on here? And it was, I don't think people ever start and think I'm going to have an affair with that person, or,
Right.
but I think it starts innocently enough. But the truth is, when I invested in him emotionally, he invested in me emotionally. I wasn't investing in my husband emotionally. And I wasn't even really emotional. We weren't sharing our hearts. We were working together, but I felt affirmed for what I was doing. I felt valued for what my contributions were. So controlling in-laws. All right. Do you want to just talk about that? Because
Yeah,
I
I
do
do.
think it's a huge thing.
Because we hear about it so much.
Yeah.
You know, when people are coming up and we're signing their books, or what do I do with controlling in-laws? And I'm going to speak from Lisa's and my what we've determined to do with our sons. And this was out of learning it the painful way. We determined that our last blessing that we give to our sons is the woman they marry. A man leaves his father and mother. That
No,
I
I
believe.
bless you guys every day.
I believe.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, no.
Bless you.
As far as where I can give input, I can say I don't want you to do this. I don't think you should do this. I think because that leave is leaving my authority. I think now what a son and daughter should do with me is honor me, but not obey me. So I kind of have set it up in my heart that unless Addison, Austin, Alec, or Arden comes to me, or one of you girls, and asks me advice, I keep my mouth shut because it's not my household. Does that make sense? And that was tough because even Addison said to me, Dad, couldn't you give me a hint? You know, he said that to me one day, and I said, Addison, unless you ask me, I'm not giving you a hint. Because I saw the damage that occurred when Lisa's mom got involved in our marriage. It really drove a wedge between us. And I saw that my parents didn't put a wedge between us because they stayed out of our affairs unless we brought them into it.
But I would say I think there's some balance in that because
And we can disagree.
well, no,
You
but
know,
I
and-
think
and
that
that's-
I think we have a very different relationship with Addison and Julie than we had with your parents. And there were things that I would have loved your parents' input on that I didn't know I even needed their input on. Like I would have loved to, if it's positioned like, hey, when we were first married, this is something we did that was stupid. Please don't do that. I would have been like, thank you.
Yeah.
Getting in, causing division, things like that, controlling, not honoring the new household. Those are huge things. But I would hope that Julie would feel like she could come to me. And I know we've had conversations, but we have a relationship.
Yeah.
So I think, again, you have to invite your mother-in-law into that, or you have to invite your daughter-in-law into like, do you want me to speak into this? Or, you know, and again, I know for me, I would have loved your mom to be more vocal on certain things just because I didn't have that from my upbringing. So I think that anytime in-laws are divisive of your wedding, divisive of your marriage
Or
covenant,
your family.
or your family, or critical or controlling, then you need to say, we love you, and you guys already got to do it that way. We're building our new life, and this is what we're doing.
But we sat down with Lisa's mom and we just said, we love you, we honor you, and we had to do this together. But you can't give unasked for advice into our family and marriage any longer. And you know what? It was hurtful for a short season, but you know what?
But I had a part in that. Like I was
yeah.
asking advice because I was going to the wrong person to get the right advice,
But
and
it
you'll
ended
never get
up-
the right advice.
But it ended up making our relationship with her
Yeah.
healthier in that area. And I don't know why, but I was the tough guy and she loved me. And I don't get it. Maybe she realized
She liked John better than me.
maybe she realized I really did love her daughter. Maybe she realized I really cared about keeping things healthy. And to be honest with you, because she had so much unhealthiness, she didn't have a picture of what a healthy family would look like. So it is something that we have to take it on a case by case basis. But I would say, let's do a general rule of thumb here. You as a parent communicate to your child, once you get married, please bring me in if you want me, but I'm staying out of your business. I'm going to love you. I'm going to care for you and your spouse. I'm going to be there for you whenever you need me. But if you don't ask me for advice, don't get upset with me if I didn't give you ask for advice. And then on the other side, you as the son or daughter that gets married, go to your spouse and say, you know, my dad or my mom's really wise in this area. Can we go talk to them? And invite them in. And I think it keeps it a lot healthier because there is a big change when you enter into a marriage. And that's why God himself said, a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife. There's a new authority line, a new family setup, and that needs to be respected.
Well, thank you for tuning in, and we would love it if you would subscribe. We'd love your comments. We'd love your input. We'd love your questions. Buy the last book, maybe the last time you get the goodies. I don't even know. You might have already lost that chance, but you want to get the book. You can get it at messengerpodcast.com. And you could, he said /offer. I'm not even sure. But until next time, this has been Conversations with Juli, Christian, John, and Lisa Bavia.